This is Chris from Internal Bleeding, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 261 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Chris Pervelis from the almighty Internal Bleeding. So how are you doing today, Chris?
Good, man. How are you? How's things?
It's been going pretty well. It's a lovely afternoon here in good old Georgia. How is it over in up in New York?
It's a little chilly, but it's nice. It's better than winter. I mowed the lawn for the first time today, so spring's coming. Hopefully, I can get my car out tomorrow morning. The weather will be nice, and you know, no complaints, man.
Awesome. So pretty much the format of the show is I want to talk about like your musical origins and do a rundown of your discography, but take you back to young Chris Pervelis. So kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to start playing guitar?
Oh, there's only one band, and it's Black Sabbath,
Yeah,
and
just
it
one
happened in
one band.
it happened. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was 1972. Um, I was in my bedroom. My sister lived down the hall. My sister was 8 years older than me. No, sorry, 6 years older than me. And I heard this noise, this something coming out of her room that just perked my ears up. And I didn't know what it was, but I just knew it was something that attracted me. And I ran into her room and I asked her what it was. And it was the song Iron Man was playing. And I was like, it's like the first time I listened to music before, but it's the first time I really discovered music, and I think right from there I was like, I want to do that.
All right, cool. And I was
Yeah.
like doing my research, and I believe your first band was Autumn Rain. Like, tell me about that
Well,
because nobody
technically,
ever
no,
talks about that.
no, technically, technically, my first band in high school was called Politically Incorrect, which is that'd be 1984 or 1983. That was a three-piece, like kind of like fast. I would put it on the lines on the spectrum of like fast DR, like DRI, kind of like dealing with it era DRI. That was my first band. My second band in college was called GBA, which was Guilt by Association, which was just kind of like a fun party hardcore band. And I was actually the singer,
Oh,
which was pretty
wow.
fun. Then came Autumn Rain after that, after I graduated college.
Yeah.
And that was like Danzig meets Black Sabbath meets death metal.
Wow. That's an interesting combination.
Yeah, it was kind of it was actually kind of cool, but it was hard to get all the styles working, and I kept wanting to get more and more into death, more and more. I kept wanting to get more and more death metal and get rid of the Danzig and blend the Black Sabbath with the death metal and get more growly vocals in there and stuff. So it just I ended up breaking up the band because it nobody saw eye to eye anymore, except for me and my vocalist, who ended up being the first official vocalist of Internal Bleeding.
Yeah. And tell me about forming the band because y'all formed in 91.
Yeah. So um I had the idea for the band in early 91. And then by I guess mid 91, I had some members and they were kind of like we jammed a couple of times and it was like, eh. And then late 91, early 92, I'd say I finally got a solid lineup of people, which would be Bill, me, John Caluco, Anthony Miola, and Eric Wigger on vocals. That's what I call the first official lineup. There was other lineups before that, but like, we'd jam once and I'd throw two people out of the band, or I wouldn't call the guys again because it just wasn't what I was going for. These guys couldn't get a hold of. So it took a little while to find people that we can get a hold of. And
Yeah.
then once that happened, things really just kind of came together.
Cool. And then tell me about making some of those like early demos, like the $1 demo, the self-titled Invocation of Evil and
Sure.
Perpetual Degradation. Like those are some like raw sounding like early stuff. Like where were those recorded at?
So the $1 demo was done in our rehearsal studio in Mineola. That's that's just simply a 4-track recording, a live 4-track recording. I set up 4 microphones and just recorded us playing, and we did that. And then we just duped copies. Our friend Pete was a janitor at a college, and he found a box of like 300 cassette tapes of law lectures from the law school. So we erased all the law lectures and just dubbed the $1 demo on these tapes
Wow.
to sell. Yeah, so that's why they were $1. I mean, it was a real cheap affair, and it was a rehearsal tape, and we didn't feel right charging anybody any more than $1. So, we thought it was also catchy to call it the $1 demo, barbarity for a
Clever
buck,
thinking.
right. So, and people bought it. So, and it helped us start our way, so as much as I look back on it now and I can't stand it and it's embarrassing, I still look back on it fondly,
Yeah.
it's
And
a
then,
good picture.
yeah. And then kind of like eventually playing around locally, and then you got signed to your first label, which was Pavement Music. So how did they find Internal Bleeding?
They found us. We did a small Midwestern, a small tour on our way out to Milwaukee Metal Fest, and we played Milwaukee Metal Fest. It was 94. I think it was the first time we played. And like, it was like this, we played in the middle of the afternoon and everybody wasn't doing anything. And we started playing and the whole place just went fucking ape shit, and it's like, finally we were vindicated as far as what we believed our music was and what it did. And, all the groove elements and all that stuff that we were pushing, and it showed in the crowd. The crowd freaked out, and the president of Pavement was in the crowd, and he was blown away. And next thing you know, he called me and said we were the best band of the night, what a best band of the day, and all that crap. And he's like, I'm going to send you a contract, and off we went.
Yeah. And then tell me about making the debut full-length Internal Bleeding album, Voracious Contempt. I thought it was a really solid debut. So what was sort of like the mind frame going into making the debut full-length Internal Bleeding album?
The mind frame was that we had to do. So we knew we were redoing some of the 4 of the demo songs. So we knew we had to kind of like reshape them a little bit to make them heavier and groovier. So we kind of engineered those songs a little bit more to slow parts down a little bit more, make things a little more groovy, change some drum beats to make them a little more groovy. And then the new songs we had written for the album had to be better than the demo songs, groovier, more slam filled, and like less blast beats, and more grooves and more street kind of sound, and a little more, believe it or not, a little more hip hop element to it and stuff like that to really get people moving. That's what got us off. So our mindset was like, we want people to put this record on, and from beginning to end, their head doesn't stop moving up and down, and they can't stop throwing furniture around their room or beating up their best friend or sticking a boot up somebody's ass or hitting somebody with a baseball bat. That's what we wanted. Complete, just utter, thuggishness and just groovy riff after groovy riff, and just beat people over the heads and just try to make music that wants people to just harm other people.
Yeah. Like I think like it's just a great album, like Languish and Despair,
Thank you.
Humanicide, and Human Suffering. Like these are all just kick-ass songs.
Thank you so much. Humanicide's, I think Humanicide is my favorite from the album. It's a tie between Humanicide and Reflection of Ignorance. Those are my 2 favorites on the album.
Yeah. And next year will be the 30th anniversary of Voracious Contempt. Is there like plans to like do a celebration of it?
Probably not. I don't. I mean, we'll probably come out with some merchandise. But like, we would never do a tour. We would never, like, I don't know, make some kind of special release, because I know this sounds crazy, but I don't want to live in the past.
Like,
You understand what I'm
yeah,
saying?
just move forward.
Just move forward. It's always about moving forward. It's never I can look back in the past and it's great and I had a good time, but that's where I was 30 years ago. This is 30 years forward from that. And we play live, we still play classics off Voracious Contempt, but we're not going to do anything crazy special to try to milk it or I don't like when bands do 30th anniversary tour, 20th anniversary tour. I personally don't like it. I get it. And I understand fans like it, but I don't want to dwell in the past.
All right.
As
And
much as I enjoyed all of it, you know what I'm saying? As much as I enjoyed all of it, I want to be in the here and the now. I don't want to be in yesterday. Life's
totally.
too short. Life's too short to live in yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday doesn't exist anymore. Today exists. And
Yeah.
that's what, and when you get older, like I am, I'm going to be 56 in next weekend. I'm going to be
Wow.
56. When you get older, you realize that living in the past is just it's not good because one day you're going to be dead and you were never living in the present. And I don't want to do it. So
Exactly. I mean, I'm 30 now, so I still have a ways to go, but I'm get what you're saying. Just focus on what's happening now and not looking back.
right. No, there's nothing wrong with looking back, but to the point of making such a huge deal over it, I'm just not like, I guess I'm not a big giant nostalgia fan,
Right. But yeah, but still talking about Voracious Contempt, like when the album first came out, what was like the tour cycle like? Because I know you mentioned you played Milwaukee Metal Fest before it was released. Like, did you like start touring like around America for the first time? Like,
Yes, yeah, we did
what
our
was that
first
whole
US
like?
tour with us. That was awesome. That was with 6 Feet Under and Immolation. And
Nice.
I mean, it was a treat for me because Immolation was and still probably is one of my top five bands. So it was a real neat for me to go out on the road with Immolation. And, I had hung out with Bob and those guys, at local shows and stuff like that, but never toured with them. And they were great to tour with. Super friendly and smart and, with it. And then going out with 6 Feet Under was great too, because, Chris Barnes had just left Cannibal Corpse. So like it was wild that we were touring with the guy who used to sing for Cannibal Corpse. And Chris was awesome. It was a great tour. It was a great tour. We cut our teeth and we learned we learned a lot. We cut our teeth. The crew taught us a lot about touring, which we didn't know about, and it was a great experience,
Yeah.
and it did a lot for us. It helped bring us to the countrywide audience, and we did very well. So um, I wish that had kept going, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. And
stalled out for a while.
yeah. Yeah. Have you ever played like the old Masquerade in Atlanta, Georgia back in the day?
Yes, the old Masquerade, yes,
Yeah.
and we played the new one at the Deicide show.
Yeah, which I was at that one. So you ever like remember at like the old Masquerade, like how bands like load in their gear, they would always have like a little elevator like on a rope
Elevate, yeah,
thing.
yeah, 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 sure, sure.
Yeah. And then you see like the new one you have to like go around like a bunch of like hallways and stuff. Almost feels like a maze. You almost could get lost in there.
Oh my God, no, you can totally like so the our backstage room was like all the way upstairs, and I have bad knees, so like because I got arthritis in my knees. So all the up and down in the stairs, I'll never forget the end of the night after that show. I was in the back loading dock where you load the equipment in, and I couldn't fucking walk. My knees were done. I had to have the guys like help pick me up and get me in the van because I couldn't walk anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those stairs. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, they need to get their shit together. They need to add an elevator.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible, but yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But but listen, that's a great place, man. It's a great venue. Other than me having to dodge human feces all over the streets of Atlanta,
Like, who the fuck just takes a shit like randomly on the street?
I was like walking down the street. I'm like, is that? I'm like, that's not a dog.
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, totally, man.
Yeah. And then next album, the Extinction of Benevolence. I thought
Benevolence.
Benevolence. I can't even fucking talk. I thought that was a good album because usually with the debut album you have your entire life to write and there's a lot of hype with the first album. When it came to making Extinction, did you felt pressure to follow up Voracious Contempt?
No, no, there was no pressure at all. We were like excited as hell to write another album because we had thought Voracious was good, but it wasn't heavy enough. And so we were like, all right, we're just going to write a ridiculously fucking stupid heavy album. It's just going to be dumb heavy. And so we were excited to write the album. So there wasn't no sophomore jinx. Like we wrote that album pretty quickly because we were so excited about it,
Nice.
and it came together quickly. And that's one of that I like that album better than Voracious Contempt, tell you the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah, yeah. I think you guys got a lot more brutal and stuff. And I know a lot of people say that you also get compared to like Suffocation, fellow New Yorkers. So
That's a lazy fucking comparison. I'm
yeah,
sorry. That is a lazy ass comparison.
yeah. I mean, I don't even hear it at all. I mean, sure, it sounds similar, but I feel like you guys definitely just like do like your own thing.
100%. It's the laziest comparison. I hate it drives me nuts and it's just fucking lazy. So if I hear anybody say that, I'm like I discount their ability to discern music. So
Nice. And then kind of going into the next album, Driven to Conquer. I thought that was good, and I'm hard to believe this year does mark 25 years of Driven to Conquer. So
I
how do you
know,
feel
don't
about the
remind me.
album now all these years?
I love that album. Um, it's I would argue strongly that album is a strong precursor to deathcore, and a lot of deathcore bands listen to that. Early deathcore bands listen to that album. Um, uh, I think it was a unique album. It mixed death metal and hardcore and even technical stuff together so well. And our drummer Billy, may rest in peace, he just killed it on that album. The drumming is fantastic. The production is really good. I mean, I love that album. I think it's great. Looking back on it, there are of course some things I would change, but I'm really proud of that album. And I think it was game changing in many ways. Although, as usual, I would say, just like when Voracious Contempt came out or when our demos came out, critics didn't see what we were doing. They couldn't see it, and it only caught on 3 years after what we did, So like, um, I'm really proud of it. So whatever.
Yeah.
That's all I can.
Yeah, and I noticed like the album artwork has like the soldier and everything with the American flag. Like, would you say that it also kind of feels like very conceptual in a way, talking about like America and war and stuff?
Well, it wasn't. It was conceptual in the fact that so I came up with. Okay, so I designed the album cover. I named the album. I'm trying to explain this so I can put you in my headspace at the time. We had gotten fucked over and screwed and shit on and beaten on by so many fucking people for so long, and we never gave up, right? So that was where the whole idea for Driven to Conquer came from, right? And then how do I express Driven to Conquer? And that's where the visuals came up. It wasn't like I used German soldiers. I got rid of the Nazi crap on it, but and I put internal bleeding on their lapels. If you look closely,
Yeah.
you know, and so it was like we're driven to conquer, and we as a band are driven to conquer. That's kind of what I was trying to get across, you know.
Yeah. And then,
And that album lyrically is a real good encapsulation of everything I was thinking at the time. So like I was very interested in the Kennedy assassination, so that's why I wrote Six Shots in Dallas. Um, Falling Down is named after the movie, and we all used to watch that movie in the studio all the time. We love that movie, so I wrote lyrics about it. Invisible is about how I felt when it came to women. Um, Slave Soul is about when I had quit my job and started my own business. So that song was about that. So it's a very that album's very personal to me lyric wise too. So
and then moving on to Onward to Mecca, and I know this year is also 20 years of that. And I thought was one thing was interesting is that the working title of this album was going to be called Hate Fuel. So what was sort of like the
yeah.
reason for the title change?
Well, because it took so long to get that album out, another band, I forgot what band, and it was a fairly big band at the time, came out with an album called Hate Fuel.
Really?
So
I
they
never knew that.
so they beat us to the punch. Either that or it was a band called Hate Fuel. That's why we changed the name of the album.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's
9/11.
one EP from like 2021 that was like even long after the fact.
Well, we had heard rumors that somebody was going to call something Hate Fuel. So, but the more important factor was 9/11.
Wow. And then, of course, after their Onward to Mecca, you toured a little bit, and then Internal Bleeding broke up in 2005. So, what was sort of like the reason for the breakup?
It wasn't necessarily a breakup. Everything just kind of fell in disarray. I had left the band in 2004. Like if you notice, I'm not on Onward to Mecca except for one song. I mean, I wrote half the album, but I'm not on the album. I had left the band because I had started my business in 1999 and things were really ramping up with my business and I had to focus on my business. So I kind of left the band and the band kind of fell just kind of into a state of nothingness until I picked up the pieces again in whatever it was, 2011.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
then yeah, and sort of like during like the breakup, what were you kind of like doing in the meantime?
What was I doing? I was building my business and I was staring at my computer, wishing I was still staring at my computer, looking at videos and writing music and stuff like that, wishing I was still in a band.
And
And
then
at my wife's prodding in 2011, she's like, "Why don't you just get everything back together and play some fucking shows? You're miserable." That's what she said to me. So it's her fault.
yeah,
She's like, "You're fucking miserable. Just get the band going and do your thing. We'll figure it out."
yeah, yeah, and then what were those first shows like back as Internal Bleeding? Did you feel like nervous at all playing like the first show back?
It was weird. So it was weird because to me, there was a lot of changeover in the fan base. So there were a lot of younger kids and different kids that at shows, and it was like, wow, this is a little weird. But after I got over that, it was a lot of fun and fell right back into the groove, and it was great. It was actually even better because um, thankfully there's demand for us. So financially, I wasn't so stressed about covering gas and once you have a family and a house and all that stuff, you can't do the 20-year-old lose $100 going to a show and back and be okay with it, But things started to break even and we started to make a little bit of money. And so it got to be a little easier to do and manage, and it was less stressful on me. So it ended up being fun after I got over the initial like twilight zone of being back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and then talking about like the comeback album Imperium, I love it, and hard to believe it's been 10 years since the comeback album
Oh
and
my
your
God, yeah,
first album
yeah.
under your current label, Unique Leader Records. So what was that like working with them?
Working with Unique Leader,
Yeah.
fucking great. Not great people. I mean, this was when Eric was still head of the label before he died. Um, and it was great. He was so supportive. He's like, here's your budget, do whatever the fuck you want to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. Put out an album.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
So
thought in my opinion it's a very underrated comeback album.
thank you. I love that. I love that album. I think it's clever. I think it's intelligent. I think it's very well written. There's some production things that I wish we could have fixed, but that's neither here there nor there. But I think that's a really good album. And I saw some pretty good reviews on it that people saw that we were doing some different things and really coming out and kind of raise the bar a little when it comes to quote unquote slam and stuff like that. So I think the reception was good. I think it is underrated because everything lives in the shadow of Voracious Contempt, and that's just the way it's going to be, and that's okay. But I'm happy with it, and I'm pleased with it, and I think fans are pleased with it. We did a couple of U.S. tours on that album, and they were both successful. So, I can't complain.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course your latest album, Corrupting Influence, came out in 2018. I
Mhm.
thought that was a really, really great album. So being as it was like the second album after like the comeback, did you feel like more comfortable now that you had some time to be like, okay, we're ready to get some new music out?
Yes, absolutely. A lot more comfortable. Um, uh, the flow and the riff writing went a lot easier because we had some band changes where, like Brian Hobby was playing guitar on Imperium and he left, which made it easier because I got Chris McCarthy in, and Chris was available to hang out and play more than Brian was. So the writing process became more streamlined. And Joe, the vocalist at the time, he lives right down the street from me. So he would come over, him, and Chris would sit, we'd write together, and things just went fast. And we knew what we were going to do. And it felt really good to write that album. Um, and it was good. It was good. I love that album. I just absolutely adore that album. I don't think there's a bad song on that album.
Yeah, like the title track, Fatal Dependency, Unreality, Litany of Insincerity. I just think it's just perfect from start to finish.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I love that album. And I love some of those songs that I wish we played live. Like I wish we would play Unreality live. I think that's a great song, especially that whole crazy ending and all that stuff. Maybe one day we'll play it live because we all talk about playing it live one day. So.
Yeah. And it has been like 6 years since Corrupting Influence. Have you all started like work on the next Internal Bleeding album? Like what's the status with that, if you're allowed to say?
I'm allowed to say a little of it.
All right.
So the album's titled Settle All Scores. Okay.
Well, you heard it here, folks.
The drum tracks have been recorded and done. We're starting the guitar tracks, I guess, next week or the week after. So everything will be done and recorded and handed in by the middle of July. We got a great artist doing the album cover. It's not going to be any AI art or anything like that. And that's all I can say because there's going to be some surprises.
Nice. Nice. And will it be kind of like continuing in the same vein as Corrupting Influence, or will you try to do something new or different that Internal Bleeding hasn't done before?
I would say it's totally different, but it's still internal bleeding. How's that?
Oh, can't go wrong there.
I mean, there's 20 million slam riffs on the album, but it's done in unique ways, and the arrangements are unique, and there's some really wild riffs going on. So it's I think it's fresh, I think it's exciting, and I think that, you know, we reinvented ourselves again
Yeah.
without changing our core sound.
Yeah. And I know like internal bleeding, it definitely kind of labels as like the slam thing. So how do you feel about like categorizations and labels? Does that matter, or is it just like, you know, it is what it is?
Um, you know what? I don't, you know, I don't know how I feel about it. Sometimes I'm down with the, like, so in our world, I mean, people can break things down to a million things. I also love jazz too. And I see the same thing go on in the jazz world, where people break every little thing down into a minute little genre. So, you know, I might not be a fan of it, but it's just a reality. That's what happens. It's a sign of something healthy in my view, because it's a sign that people are really listening and trying to discern differences between things.
Yeah. Because there's
You
always like
know,
the like you were saying.
like I said before, you know, I mean, when we were talking about somebody who makes a lazy comparison between us and suffocation, they can't discern a difference between something. I think some of these people who believe in the whole genre thing and the subgenre thing are so into the music that they can discern all the differences. And I think that's cool. Maybe it's a little like mind blowing, like your head is spinning because you can't keep up with it. But that's the sign of something vital and healthy. So
Nice. Because I know like death metal, like we've of course there's always there's the slamming death metal, brutal death metal, technical death metal, melodic death metal, and then I bet you there's gonna be like a subgenre. It sometimes gets ridiculous because it almost feels like you're naming like a species of plants or some shit.
right, I know, but that goes back to what I just said. Yes, it can be really annoying, and sometimes you got to roll your eyes because people come up with the wildest shit, but it's the sign of an active, healthy scene. You know what I'm saying? It means that people are actually listening and paying attention and trying to discern differences. And I think that's cool. Maybe I'm not on board with it all because it's just like my head spins, but you know, I still think it's cool because people are just nerding out on this stuff, and it's great.
Yeah. And how do you feel about like the whole how death metal has evolved over the years? Because starting out there was always like the death and possessed that pretty much would consider like the first like wave. And then there's the second wave, which I would consider like with the cannibal corpses and the deicides and the morbid angel Jules and all that stuff. And then there's even like newer bands like 200 Stab Wounds, Frozen Soul, Sanguisuga Bog, which of course like would take inspiration from like the classic death metal bands. So how do you feel? How does it feel like when like younger bands say like, "Hey, you guys were really influential on my playing"?
Oh, I think it's awesome. I mean, we've done a bunch of touring with Sanguisugnabog, and you know, Devin constantly tells me how much of an influence you know, we are to him and all that stuff. I think it's awesome. I mean, I think, excuse me. I know a lot of older guys and gals like complain about that stuff, but I just don't see the point in it. Um, you know, I just don't I don't get it. I just don't get all that stuff. I mean, as long as the music keeps perpetuating and keeps going, I will tell you the one thing that I miss is the danger. Okay, so like if you went to an early Deicide show, like when Legion came out or the Deicide self-titled album came out, there was genuine fear when you went to the show that something awful was going to happen and somebody was going to get really hurt. I miss that. That danger isn't there because everybody's become acclimated to the music. And we're trying to bring that danger back. That's why we write the riffs we write, and we try to get people whipped up into a frenzy because we want to bring that danger back. Rock and roll is about danger,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I loved about a lot of those early, like I'll never forget. It's another memory that's seared in my mind. I think it was like 1991 or 92. There was this show in New York City called The Hangman's Ball. Great show, incredible lineup. Grave, Suffocation, Cannibal Corpse, Carcass, Ripping Corpse, like unbelievable
What a
lineup, right?
lineup.
Right. And I will never forget it was at the place called the Ritz. I'll never forget the curtain got about 6 inches high, lifted 6 inches high, and Suffocation started playing before the curtain was even up. They started playing, and I got a right hook to my face that like distorted my entire face, and the whole place just exploded, and bodies were everywhere, and people were getting the shit kicked out of each other.
Holy
And that was
shit.
great. Yeah, it was like, and that's what I mean by the danger. Like, it was dangerous. It was scary, dangerous. And that's missing. And I don't know how to bring it back. And as a 50 going on 56, I don't know if I would want to be a part of that danger, but I certainly would want to bring that feeling back, because that is like, you feel so alive and so like electricity is flowing through you, and it's just the greatest thing in the world. And that danger needs to come back.
Oh, yeah. And then sort of
And I
like
don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it, brother. I just don't know how to do it. I know a lot of black metal bands try to do it with all their gimmicks and all that. It's not the same.
yeah. Yeah. Do you ever worried about like people being hurt and being like being responsible for it and show shutdowns and lawsuits and shit?
We already got sued for $10 million once.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Deicide show, as a matter of fact. We played with Deicide in our hometown, and a kid broke his neck when we were playing, and we got sued for $10 million.
Fuck, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we settled out of court, and it sucked.
Yeah. And then sort of like the final question I wanted to ask you is because I love your guitar playing. It's very techy, very rhythmic, and I just think it's fucking great. So I'm just curious, like, what's like your setup in terms of like guitars you use, strings, pedals, amps, all that good stuff.
Okay. Guitars, I use Dean guitars. I'm endorsed by Dean, so I use Dean. I have three Deans that I go through that I use. Strings, generally I use NYXLs from D'Addario. And I use the detuning set, which I think is an 1156. Amplification, I use a PV Invective with going through a Vader cabinet, and that's it. I don't really use much other than a noise suppressor pedal. I don't use any effects or anything like that. I try to keep my setup as simple as possible, as honest as possible. Every once in a while, I'll go old school and I'll whip out my old Ampeg VH140C head, but it's old and it's not great for the road, but it's good for recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but my rig and my setup is really easy. Is really simple. I don't want to deal with, it goes back to the rock and roll and the danger thing. I don't want to deal with a lot of shit. I just want to plug in and kill people.
Good thing to say. So, kind of like in the end to wrap things up, what's next for Internal Bleeding? I know you mentioned that you're working on the next album. Like, what's next in terms of like tours and stuff?
We don't know yet. We got a couple of great things coming up this fall. We've got a whole this is going to be wild. We're playing a bunch of shows in California. I'm not going to give you the clubs or anything like that because I'm not supposed to really talk about it, but we're playing a bunch of shows in California, then flying to Hawaii, doing a show in Hawaii, then flying to New Zealand, doing shows in New Zealand, and then going to Australia, doing shows in Australia. coming home. So that's going to be really cool. Have a couple of festivals we're doing this fall. And then once the album comes out, we'll start putting tours together. And I don't think they're going to be major tours, like 1 month tours. I think we're gonna try to break things up. I think we're gonna try a different strategy where we go out with some younger bands. So we're gonna headline and take out. So like for 2 weeks, maybe we'll do the East Coast with a young up and coming band. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll do 2 weeks on the West Coast with a different young up and coming band. I think we want to approach that. I think, that's what we've been talking about, like doing like strategic kind of like hits with young up and coming bands to not only give the young up and coming bands a chance, but to help us get in front of some younger fans too, to help keep perpetuating the Internal Bleeding name and stuff like that. So I think that's how we're going to approach it, but you never know. If we get a really good tour offer with a major established band, of course we're taking it,
Absolutely. So, thank you, Chris, for this conversation. It's so glad to finally have Internal Bleeding on my show.
I'm really sorry about, I know we were supposed to hook up last week, and that's all my fault. Just things, I'm trying to manage this band. I'm trying to manage my business, and things are crazy at my house. And I am sorry you slipped through the cracks. I'm glad we got it together, and I
Oh, yeah.
appreciate it.
Better late than never, I always say, man. There's just
Yeah,
any final words you want to say to like the viewers that are watching this to close us out?
sure. If you're already an Eternal Bleeding fan, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You made this 30 plus years worth every minute of blood, sweat, and tears. And if you're a new fan, welcome aboard. Come to our website, www.internal-bleeding.com. Keep up on all the news. Say hi to us on Facebook. Hit up our Instagrams. We're all active on social media. So, join in on the fun.
Awesome. So everybody, Chris from Internal Bleeding, see you next time.